dominate a lot of the American corporate landscape, but it took several decades, but it absolutely did happen. And so I think a lot of these figures that really should be seen as mobsters have managed to rebrand themselves as philanthropists. But again, the focus has been kept very neatly on Epstein and very neatly about very specific aspects of that case, not on the broader picture and what it might mean if someone has a tie to Epstein. Having a tie to Epstein doesn't mean that person is a pedophile. It doesn't necessarily mean they were sexually blackmailed either. In a lot of cases, I think it has to do with business and financial links. But if Epstein is a financial criminal operating on behalf of this blob of organized crime and intelligence, that deserves scrutiny as well. And there hasn't really been any interest in pursuing those links really at all. And I think there should be.
The digital world promises freedom, innovation, and opportunity. But behind this facade lies an invisible cage, one controlled by unseen forces of power and influence. In her explosive interview, Whitney Webb exposes how a carefully crafted system keeps society trapped in a virtual prison, one most people don't even know exists. For decades, power players with dark pasts have reinvented themselves as philanthropists, earning trust and access to elite circles. This strategic makeover has allowed them to infiltrate public and private institutions. Behind the polished image of progress and goodwill lies a hidden web of alliances, secret deals, and unspoken agendas shaping our lives without our consent. One of the most chilling examples of this covert system is Jeffrey Epstein. Whitney Webb reveals how Epstein wasn't just a shady financier embroiled in personal scandals. He was a key player in a network tied to intelligence agencies and the world's most powerful individuals. While the media focused on his personal misconduct, the deeper story of how he helped sustain systems of influence and control went largely ignored. This isn't just a story about Epstein, it's about the system he represented, one that keeps people distracted while silently locking them into a digital prison. Let's watch clips from Whitney Webb's explosive interview to gain more insight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
I wanted to ask you, is there an Epstein 2.0? Like, has somebody come in and filled that void, or did that entire operation die with Epstein?
Yeah, it absolutely didn't die with Epstein, but I think Epstein 2.0 isn't a person, it's software. It's online surveillance. That by the time, well after Epstein's first arrest and before his second arrest in 2019, really it was more, it's really all about technology at this point. And a lot of the same people that had been involved with Epstein are part of this network. Like Ghislaine Maxwell's father, for example, Robert Maxwell, were involved in intelligence-linked operations to backdoor, critical infrastructure in the United States. And there's been a long history of people trying to, obtain intelligence through surreptitious means. And so sexual blackmail for a long time was part of that. But once sort of the internet and technology came to dominate, our lives in the post-2000s era, it's not really necessary to have someone doing sexual blackmail in the way that Epstein did it. It actually is much less risky for them because they don't have to pay to help maintain someone's billionaire playboy lifestyle or, maintain the data obtained from sexual blackmail parties or any of these things. And there's a lot less risk involved. Epstein himself is a great example, sort of got outed that he was doing this kind of stuff in 2007. And they try and put it back in the bottle, but they can't quite really, and then it totally explodes, roughly a decade later. Again, so if you're doing it covertly through software, you not only know what everyone is looking and doing online, who they're communicating to, what they're saying, and if they have sexual deviances, for example, that's very easy to find online for certain people these days, and add that to the profile on you, which is ultimately what a lot of this warrantless spying in the post 9/11 era has been about. It's about profiling Americans for this basically this vision that was developed in the Bush era, but is coming to fruition now, nevertheless, that people seem for some reason to think the neocons are not in power. This vision persists of having sort of this pre-crime society where
Let's explore how infinite banking can put you back in control of your money. It starts with your income.
Always, right?
Society where AI is preventing crime and preventing pandemics and preventing anything bad from happening ever before it happens, kind of thing. This has its antecedents back then, and a lot of this NSA warrantless spying is that. So it's about profiling people. So a lot of this, essentially everything you do online is sucked up and put in databases about, essentially every American. And this has been known for some time, but no administration, Republican or Democrat, including, President-elect Trump, when he was in office the first time, there's been no effort to really effectively or meaningfully wind this down in any way. So in addition to that, with this kind of software having a back door into consumer computers or personal computers and commercial computers too, you can put criminalizing data or files on anyone's computer and also frame them. So there's, the potential for all sorts of mischief, for lack of a better word, trying to avoid swearing perhaps, but, terrible things that, they're enabled to do by technology, and the cost, the overhead for them is very, very cheap relative to what it would have been to sort of get the person they want to influence in a compromising situation with someone like Epstein, right? So I think it's moving to technology, and I think Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were very aware of that because starting in the late 1990s, really 99 or so, they started to court very heavily people who would become the dominant Silicon Valley oligarchs of today. So like Jeff Bezos had a very intimate relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. The Google co-founders, particularly Sergey Brin, very cozy with Epstein. Both Google co-founders were subpoenaed as part of that U.S. Virgin Islands Epstein JP Morgan trial. So was Elon Musk. Reid Hoffman, very well documented, very cozy relationship with Epstein that involved visits to the island and the townhouse and all of that. Of course, there's Bill Gates, whose ties to Epstein, despite mainstream media's claims, go back to the 1990s, not to 2011 as they claim. I would argue that's because they're trying to absolve Microsoft of any potential compromise factor as it relates to Epstein, because that was at a time when Gates had officially left his formal role at Microsoft, and there is a lot of weird stuff about Epstein and Microsoft in the 90s and into the 2000s. And given that Microsoft is essentially ubiquitous globally and is the operating system on every computer, the fact you would have someone like that involved with them is pretty significant in light of what I was just saying earlier about the potential for blackmail and technology today. And so, by having these sort of relationships with these top figures whose services and programs for essentially are running our lives today, that's something that I don't think has been properly explored. So even though that Epstein, there's the fact that Epstein does, as you pointed out, remain a cultural phenomena, I think a lot has been done to sort of maintain the spectrum of interest in Epstein's specifically on sex crimes and people who may be on the quote-unquote client list and things like that. And really, if you look at Epstein, he was not mainly a sex blackmailer. He was mainly, for lack of a better word, a financial criminal that facilitated financial crimes of very, very wealthy people and also of intelligence.
Jeffrey Epstein's legacy may seem like a thing of the past, but his influence has evolved into something far more pervasive. According to Whitney Webb, Epstein 2.0 isn't a person, it's a system. This system leverages digital surveillance and data profiling to manipulate individuals on a scale far greater than traditional blackmail ever could. Connected to tech elites like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk, Epstein recognized early on the growing power of technology. Today, every action online is tracked, creating what Webb calls a pre-crime society driven by AI. Webb warns that advanced surveillance and AI are reshaping the boundaries of privacy and freedom. For decades, intelligence agencies and tech giants like Google and Microsoft have built systems for mass data collection, creating detailed profiles that can be easily exploited. Predictive policing has added another layer of control, using algorithms to make critical decisions about individuals' futures, despite their often questionable accuracy. Webb describes this as a digital panopticon, where constant monitoring forces people into compliance and self-censorship. Though presented as innovation, she argues, this system erodes civil liberties and undermines the core values of freedom and democracy. Let's watch more clips from the interview.
U.S. intelligence can access people's devices remotely. And as I mentioned earlier, you have not only Epstein having all of these ties to what are now our biggest, the people that run or created the biggest companies in big tech, but a lot of those big tech companies were created with the direct involvement of our intelligence service. You have someone like Epstein who's operating on behalf of intelligence services. And I would argue that Epstein, not unlike Robert Maxwell, had his hands in more than one intelligence agency pie. I don't think it's necessarily fair to pin him down with one. But if you have him serving those particular agencies and those agencies want the quote unquote intelligence and you use that to blackmail someone and you have all these tech companies and the person you want to blackmail uses Google, uses Oracle, uses Microsoft or whatever, it's not very hard to be able to access all of their information. And a lot of things about these backdoors have been pretty widely established, and it's been something that's been going on a massive scale since the 1980s, at least. Maybe earlier, but we can definitely pinpoint key examples of it happening in the 80s and afterward. Well, so predictive policing, as it would be implemented now, would obviously involve an artificial intelligence algorithm. So basically, you would have to ensure that those algorithms are as close to 100% accurate as possible, and none of them are. So invariably, this AI or a pre-crime AI may say that you are likely to commit a crime and you're not, but how do you argue with it, right? Computer says. And a lot of the big, artificial intelligence thinkers in the security space, like ex-Google CEO Eric Schmidt, who ran the government's U.S. National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence.
Probably the most common question that I'm asked as a professor at Hillsdale is, what happened to my country? When they polled America.
Intelligence, he essentially argues that artificial intelligence is going to be, if not already, vastly superior to humans. And because of that, it thinks differently than humans and thus cannot explain itself to humans. It can't explain how it reaches a particular conclusion. And so, but because we should, almost religiously believe that AI is much more intelligent than humans, that we should accept its conclusions without question. Interesting. Definitely a good way for government to avoid accountability for all sorts of stuff with that type of logic. But as an aside, that would mean that if that's applied, that type of thinking is applied with an inaccurate AI in the law enforcement context, there's really no way to argue against it, because they'll be like, well, the algorithm says that you will. And you'll be like, but I won't. And I mean, how far do you think that would necessarily...
See? It's getting real. It's getting too real for the folks out here, but it's falling.
Bro, y'all realize we still not even 30 days into the year yet? Just take a second and realize that. We're not even 30 days into the year yet. This is crazy. This is crazy. But we're going to get to everything, man. So y'all know how this goes. Question everything. You should. And remember, this is for entertainment purposes only. Let's get to it.
Tonight, an unfolding catastrophe in Asheville, North Carolina. Homes and buildings swept away by raging floodwaters that have submerged the town.
It's beyond anything I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Parts of the town not underwater, completely cut off.
Somebody on a Facebook post said something about having to fly out of Asheville because you can't drive out of Asheville.
That extreme.
Yeah.
With no power and no cell service, crowds formed outside this hotel, one of the only places in town with working Wi-Fi.
We've been just trying to get on as much as we can and either get an email or a text out and just let everybody know that we're okay.
We met up with Cindy Tran, her forever home, a self-described oasis, ravaged by the cresting French Broad River nearby.
The water came up so quick, halfway up to the second floor. We thought the way it just kept rising so fast, it was going to get to the second floor. So we had to get out.
A similar scene in the town of Chimney Rock, virtually wiped off the map by floodwaters.
Chimney Rock's gone. Lion Ridge gone.
Meanwhile, the heavy rains triggering a massive mudslide that washed out this stretch of I-40, a major highway connecting western and eastern parts of the state. One bit of good news, Two dams that were in danger of collapse, the Nolichucky and Lake Lure dams, now appear to be okay as water levels slowly recede. Helene's flooding rains bringing devastation to Tennessee as well. In Irwin, the scene of this dramatic rescue. Patients and staff rushing to the roof as floodwaters engulf the Unicoi County Hospital. Boats and helicopters converging to quickly get them to safety.
I was very concerned that we was going to lose the hospital.
In South Carolina, crews dug this tree off a car. Strong winds leaving more than 1 million people there without power. Back in Asheville, residents resorting to kayaks to get around flooded streets as they figure out how to move forward.
Are you okay?
How is this not enough to warrant national and global attention? Bro, do you realize what our eyes just witnessed throughout this 2-minute video? 2 minutes, 16 seconds to be exact? How does this not warrant massive attention? I don't understand that.
I will be. Every now and then. I was fine yesterday, believe it or not, but now, like today, things have been settling in and I just can't stop crying.
Although the water has started to recede, the damage is already done, and with more potential rain in the forecast, people here just don't know how much more they can take. Jose?
No longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina.
There it is.
Treated so badly.
They have been treated badly. Just announced President Trump will be taking his first trip of the second term to disaster-stricken North Carolina and California. People are finally going to get relief. Not in time. The past administration should have done something. Western North Carolina looks like a third world country. And the sooner that people start acknowledging that and start making a difference, if it weren't for citizens and God's people and people coming to their aid, the government did not. So I am deeply excited to see that President Trump is acknowledging the fact that these places really need our support.
What some people are terming the quademic of infectious diseases hitting hard this season. And joining us now is Dr. Stephanie Whitmer with more on how to stay healthy. Doctor, good morning.
Meet Niles Kinnerk.
I knew it. I knew it.
They're a seed company, and they've been selling exclusive variety.
Whitmer with more on how to stay healthy. Doctor, good morning to you. It's great to have you.
The what? The quad? See, man, when they start throwing out these words like this, bro, all I can hear is my grandma playing in the back of my mind, bro. It's the last. It's the last. Coming up towards the end.
Thank you guys for having me. So I guess let's talk about these viral syndromes.
And I want to jump right into some of the numbers here as we get into it, because flu, COVID, RSV, norovirus making the rounds this winter. RSV cases higher than they were this time of year last year. 35 states reporting high or very high levels of respiratory illness. And the CDC estimates that there have been at least 5.3 million illnesses, 63,000 hospitalizations, and 2,700 deaths from the flu so far this season. So we just mentioned earlier, people calling this a quademic. Is that really an accurate description? And how would you explain what's really going on?
So this term quademic, it refers to the convergence of high levels of, just like you said, flu, COVID, RSV, and this norovirus. And there are multiple factors at play here. Different social, environmental, biologic factors that are causing these numbers that, in New York, it's not unprecedented to see high levels of viral syndromes, especially during the winter when there's indoor crowding, increased travel, lots of different gatherings. But there are other factors at play here, such as viral evolution, new strains that emerge, lots of different things.
Doctor, how do we know what we have? Because so many of these symptoms can be so similar.
So that's completely true. So fever, chills, headache, body aches, fatigue, things like that are pretty much across the board with different viral syndromes. Norovirus is a little bit different. On the other hand, that presents primarily with GI symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, aches, things like that. But that's not necessarily unique to norovirus. You can have some overlap with the flu. So based on symptoms alone, it's not always entirely possible to tell which viral syndrome you have.
Wow. You know, doctor, when we pulled up the first map that showed where in the country there was very high or just high, I was struck by right here, the areas where it's very high, it's not just in one concentrated area. Can you explain what might be causing where we're seeing those spikes? Is it just population? And then what are best remedies? When should you go to the emergency room?
Sure. So, like I said, it depends. Different outbreaks happen for different reasons, indoor crowding, different strains, different things that are going on in the community. But, you know, pretty much across the board, the way we care for these viral syndromes is what we call conservative management and supportive care. So getting enough rest, staying adequately hydrated, taking over-the-counter medications, fever relievers, pain reducers, acetaminophen and ibuprofen, things like that. Kind of letting the virus run its course. The good news is that these symptoms pretty much tend to resolve themselves spontaneously. But when you're experiencing things like shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, if you're unable to walk or care for yourself, and if you're unable to eat or tolerate anything by mouth and you're not able to drink water, that's a pretty good time to go to the emergency department for an evaluation.
So you mentioned some of the remedies there, but what about...
Yeah, right. Of course.
It takes a rebel to make something beautiful. Beauty takes courage. They could heal themselves, Terry. Just put a freeze across all of the government dealing with human health services. From my count, folks, there are 27 agencies that just got told you cannot be on social media or do a speaking engagement. You can't post anything in the Federal Register without approval. But why are they doing this? Isn't there a bird flu going around? Shouldn't we all be scared for our lives? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why Miss Fate did this, why Trump has ordered total control and shutdown of these inflated, egomaniac, mad scientist groups, and how in the end it's actually going to benefit the American people. So the mad scientists of the NIH and the CDC and the HHS just had their wings clipped, folks. What exactly do I mean by that? I mean the Trump administration has come in and ceased all non-emergency warnings, papers, and funding, and they're freaking out. So let's break this down in a way that you can understand that mainstream media is twisting this narrative to make it look like the Trump administration is hiding the bird flu, when in reality, it's a lot more simple and a lot less sinister than that. Hey everybody, welcome back to Starkey Formstead. So my name is Samantha, and I want to explain something to you guys. So there's something called a Federal Register. Now, in this Federal Register, what happens is the federal government puts out statistics, they put out grant opportunities, they put out where they're going to be funding, and they even post some data and studies in it. Now, we all know that the CDC under Fauci was, well, out of flipping control, folks. They literally took the voice of our president away when he was telling people what natural ways they could heal themselves for COVID-19. So what we're seeing right now is Trump is a lot smarter than he was his first 4 years. So he's come into office and using Think, he has basically silenced the CDC unless it is an emergency. And you want to know who's having a fit? Mainstream media. Get ready, guys, to be infuriated. Here we go.
This isn't a popular idea. Bird flu. Bird flu. Today in Long Island, New York, a duck farm that has been in operation since 1908 shut down. They had to shut down to start the process of euthanizing their entire flock of 100,000 ducks. Because at that farm in Long Island, New York, they've got a confirmed outbreak of bird flu. And bird flu has now killed more than 130 million birds in the United States, in all 50 states. In 28 states, they're now testing their dairy cows for it as well, because it has jumped from birds to cows. which means one of the risk factors they're now alerting people to for this thing is consumption of or contact with raw milk. It's a risk factor now for bird flu. Nearly 70 people in the United States have been infected with bird flu thus far. We've even had deaths of people's pet cats because the cats have drunk raw milk meant for human consumption. The raw milk was from cows infected with bird flu. It gave the cats bird flu, and then the cats died. Because of all that very bad and now very fast-moving news about this new epidemic, the CDC just sent urgent guidance to American hospitals, advising hospitals that when people appear at the hospital with flu this flu season, people shouldn't just be tested for normal flu. They need to be tested for bird flu as well, because that needs to be handled differently. And anybody who tests positive for bird flu needs to be separated from other patients. Hospital staff need to know about it in order to wear appropriate protective clothing to protect themselves. I say the CDC just sent that urgent advice to American hospitals, but when I say they just sent it, what I mean specifically is they sent that advice last week while President Biden was still president. Because now that President Trump is president, he has ordered that the CDC and all U.S. health agencies should no longer release any information to anyone on anything. Not just to the public, but to scientists and doctors and hospitals. And that includes the CDC's flagship health alert publication for doctors and scientists called MMWR, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. This week, CDC was scheduled to publish several MMWR reports, including 3 about this burgeoning bird flu outbreak that is happening and rapidly progressing right now.
Now, during Trump's first administration, they tried to get control of that publication she's talking about. And well, I had no other words to use, but they cock-blocked him, folks. And what ended up happening was the CDC and Fauci just published whatever nonsense they wanted, setting precedents and shutdowns and control of people across a free country. So what's really happening is people like the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, can't fund all the grants that people literally live on and base their entire careers on. So what Trump's doing is putting people in place going, is this even what we want to spend federal dollars on? And isn't that exactly what he said he was going to do for the American people? He was going to drain the swamp. Well, in doing so, he has to cut the head off of multiple snakes, folks, because your federal government isn't just one entity anymore. You have the NIH, you have the HHS, you have the CDC, and it just keeps going. So how else is he supposed to take control of it? Cease movement, stop funding, stop reports, stop everything until he gets people in place to take control. Now, this shutdown isn't going to last more than about 2 weeks. And don't forget, the CDC still has permission if there is a major, extreme, or dangerous situation with food recalls and or diseases to put that information out to the public. So what do you have? You have what I call CIA fear-mongering psyop being controlled through mainstream media. That's what these people are paid to do, is to stir up confusion and fear. Because if you listen to them carefully, you can tell they're lying. Watch this clip real quick.
Gesturing to the rhythm of your voice. It's called baton gestures. If there's one thing
you can tell they're lying. Watch this clip real quick.
Well, meanwhile, Trump's nominee to run Health and Human Services for the U.S. government reportedly approached one of the nation's largest raw milk producers, asking him to please become an advisor to the FDA in Washington. This is a man whose company has been the subject of at least 11 different lawsuits stemming from contamination of his raw milk products. This farmer has also been the subject of 13 recalls, including for E. coli and Listeria and Campylobacter and Salmonella and, yes, bird flu in his raw milk. His products are currently barred from sale in California for making so many people sick. One salmonella outbreak his company is being sued for resulted in 171 people being sickened, including some people who got kidney failure. Now we are in the midst of the most serious outbreak of bird flu we have ever had as a country, one that is rapidly growing and affects multiple species, including now.
Here's the interesting thing I wanted to point out. She takes the time to tell you how many times his company has been recalled for dangerous listeria and bacteria outbreaks in his raw milk products. God forbid we put this man in control of anything to do with our food system, right? Well, let's talk about food recalls. Have you ever noticed how many food recalls happen with dairy products every single month in America and Canada alone? Just look at them. And it's usually the same companies over and over and over. So what she's not telling you is really his company hasn't had that many outbreaks at any time. You're doing something organically and naturally, you're going to have a higher bacteria count. It's not often, but folks, it does happen. In fact, it happens even when they have everything in place to kill all the good nutrients in your food. Well, this time, Trump wised up. And what he has done is even stopped the National Institute of Health's funding. Like I said earlier, they can't fund any of these ridiculous studies that they spend millions of dollars on every single year. Now, we're going to move on. I'm going to show you some more interesting things about this topic. And here's the thing about bird flu that just blows my mind. Do you guys know that right now in Korea, they have figured out how to use, is it kombucha? I can't say it. Kombucha? Anyway, they're using it to fight bird flu. Why? Because it has ginger and garlic. Now, if you guys have watched me over the years, even before I got my teeth, you know that I was preaching over 16 months ago, how do you cure bird flu in birds? Ginger. Not just ginger and garlic. There are multiple studies. It takes you 10 seconds to type it out on your phone and Google it yourself. You can save, they could have saved those 100,000 ducks they just killed in New York. They could have saved all these hundreds of thousands of chickens and quail across the United States simply by doing an infusion of garlic as well as ginger. Here's me from a year ago, before I had teeth, but I'm still cute. Or to the bird flu. Possibly, what I found out was that when you feed ginger to chickens, you improve their appetite. You help with digestion. You can cure constipation. But what I really found extremely interesting is that it has been proven that ginger is very effective against the flu. Okay? It also strengthens immune systems and is considered a probiotic as well as a prebiotic. It is also used to help worm livestock. Now, the way that you can feed ginger to your chickens is in powder form, root form, or in a tea. So what we're going to do now, we're going to grate up this piece of ginger into a pot with some water, and we're going to boil it for 5 minutes. Then we are going to take that water, we're going to pour it into the water for our chickens. Your health starts in your gut, and your gut needs good bacteria. It needs it. You need some organic raw products in your diet, folks. And I just can't understand how killing millions of livestock is going to stop the spread. Next, they'll be telling us to mask up and stay inside so we don't kill our neighbors. I'm just warning.
What's the number one proven? Do you remember being told to? And I mean, how far do you think that would necessarily get you?
in the justice system, if this is actually implemented on any meaningful level. It's complicated, and there's all sorts of things that could factor into that. Again, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these algorithms are known to be racially biased against certain socioeconomic classes. A lot of the ones previously used for law enforcement, if you live in a particular neighborhood with a higher crime incident, you're deemed, just by living there, more likely to commit a crime, right? Even if you have no plans to do so. And so there's all sorts of factors that are considered by artificial intelligence, but ultimately take, human agency out of the equation. And I think that's, quite obvious that that's troubling. And again, aside from biases, there's also the fact that AIs are known to hallucinate and just make stuff up that isn't real. And, there's been a lot of instances of that, particularly in the era of generative AI, where it's just, made answers that make no sense, or like outright made stuff up in response to questions it's asked. That type of thing can happen with AI. And so, if you're going to outsource decision-making that can ruin an entire person's life to an algorithm that isn't 100% accurate, should we do that as a society? And again, it's very hard to know how accurate these programs actually are. So for example, if the company says it's 90% accurate, that's the company saying it. Is it independently vetted? Really, none of these statistics about accuracy are independently vetted. So for all you know, it could be 70%, 60% accurate. And a lot of time, as we know, people, when it's a contract, obviously it seems most likely in the U.S. context, such an AI would be given, it would be contracted from a private company. There's a lot of cronyism there. So somebody knows somebody and they get the contract, even though they're not really the ones that were the best business for the contract, right? So maybe they have an even less accurate algorithm. So even if you have one that's, let's say, actually is 70% accurate, what do you do with the 30% of people they flag? And how do you determine their innocence if you're operating in a pre-crime scenario? It's definitely not good for civil liberties. And I think ultimately it's not necessarily going to reduce crime. Larry Ellison, who I mentioned earlier, was recently interviewed about how extreme AI surveillance like this will ensure that citizens are on their best behavior. And this is kind of the idea from which the name panopticon is derived, right? Which was originally a prison design. If you're constantly being watched and surveilled, even if you're doing nothing wrong, just knowing you're constantly watched will make you auto-correct your behavior, be on your best behavior always. But to me, that's inherently tyrannical and authoritarian and very bad, and definitely against what a lot of American values and constitutional values. And so I don't really agree with that vision for the future. But a lot of these people in elite circles think very differently than that.
The unchecked rise of artificial intelligence, coupled with political shifts, signals a precarious future for civil liberties and democratic processes. Whitney Webb's insights about the intersection of technology and surveillance are especially relevant as President-elect Trump prepares to dismantle AI safeguards implemented by the Biden administration. Webb has long warned that intelligence agencies and tech giants, such as Google and Microsoft, have exploited backdoors for mass data collection. In this new era, AI becomes a powerful tool for profiling, manipulation, and controlling narratives, often blurring ethical boundaries. The use of AI in elections, as highlighted by Trump's campaign, mirrors Webb's concerns about technology becoming a weaponized force. Campaigns employed AI for targeting voters and generating memes, while deepfake technology loomed as a potential threat. Webb's analysis of AI's role in eroding trust aligns with growing fears about how unchecked technological advances can shape political discourse and societal behavior. Without robust regulation, AI risks becoming an authoritarian tool that enables pre-crime policing and reinforces systemic biases, as Webb has cautioned. As Trump's administration promises to prioritize innovation over regulation, the risk of AI-driven misinformation and surveillance grows. Webb's depiction of a digital panopticon, where individuals self-censor under constant surveillance, feels disturbingly prescient. The absence of transparency and accountability in AI applications could erode democracy further, creating a society where technology suppresses.
So as you can see, folks, there's a war in the cosmos, and you're in the middle of it, called the Ouija tech. Upset.
So you mentioned some of the remedies there, but what about prevention?
So prevention is key. One thing that's very important, if you haven't gotten your flu vaccine or any other vaccines you might be eligible for, it is not too late. So reach out to your healthcare provider to see which vaccines you can be eligible for. Hand washing is huge, especially with this norovirus. So hand sanitizer may not be 100% effective for norovirus. So washing your hands after
key to remember.
20 seconds, yes, because a lot of these viruses can live on surfaces. So washing your hands adequately, not touching your face, your nose, your mouth, things like that are huge for prevention.
Dr. Stephanie Whitmer, thank you so much for being here. Really good advice.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
What some people, I think the main thing I've talked to people and they've been saying is that they don't know what it is that they have. They just know they're sick. And if you look into the darkness, they don't know what it is that they have. They just know they're sick. So they don't know if it's the flu. They don't know what it is. You know what I mean? And that's crazy to me right now. So you got 4 different things you got to worry about, all come with similar but yet different symptoms. This is a crazy time, man. Crazy time.
People, you need to wake up. NASA came out and said that all of the moon landing sites are now on the back side of the moon, and NASA called it the dark side of the moon. I did a video. I said, look, there's no such thing as the dark side of the moon. The dark side of the moon is an album by Pink Floyd, and it's just a phrase on that album, but there is no such thing
Nicki
as the dark
Minaj
side
and
of
Lil
the
Wayne.
moon, because supposedly, according to NASA's own model, as the moon goes around the Earth, the sun shines on the back, it shines on the front, it shines on the side, according to their model. And when I was a kid, and you probably learned this too, they used to have a map of the moon with all the craters. I mean, it's still out there. And every crater was named. Every little mark on the moon is named. And they've got a different name for the different features on the moon. And on some of those maps, they posted where all the lunar landing sites were. And they're all on the face of the moon, all of them. So NASA came out and said, we're going to go up there with a non-manned mission, and we're going to take a video of all of these landing sites that everybody wants to see. And now they're saying that they're on the dark side of the moon. The moon does not turn. We only see the face of the moon. How did the lunar landing sites get switched to the back side of the moon? Now they're all on the back side of the moon. And NASA is saying in their conference that they came out and did, that the video is going to be grainy and dark because it's on the dark side of the moon. And that they're not going to be able to get good video. They came out and said they're going to make the videos, and it's not going to be live. They don't have the ability to do live transmissions, even though they did it in 1960s. And they said it's going to be very bad quality, and we're not going to be able to see anything because it's on the dark side of the moon. Folks, there is no dark side of the moon. Every day, the back side of the moon is going to get light. Every single day. So
this proves what the Holy Spirit told me. They was on the other side of the ice wall where there is no sun 24/7. William Butler and his little boat and them guys told you. Admiral Byrd told you. A lot of people went on the side of the ice wall. Well, in the real, that is Mars and Jupiter. But Mars is known to be red. Because right there in Jupiter is Aldebaran, Arcturus. These are all red stars. But Betelgeuse, whom you call Sirius B, whom is Isis, Ishtar, circling around Sirius A, the mother of all life, written in your Bible, Genesis 3, the mother of the living versus the serpent, or the mother of the life seed versus the serpent seed. pretty much proved to you where Sirius A really is. But what about Betelgeuse, aka Sirius B, which ecliptically goes around Sirius A in the same Canis Major system? But they're not going to tell you that. Go ahead, try to look it up.
It's just another lie. And the fact that they moved the landing sites to the backside, which they used to tell us, you'll probably remember this if you're as old as I am. They said you can see the American flags and the lunar landing pods if you had high enough magnification. I have high enough magnification. I cannot see anything on the face of the moon. There is no landing sites.
They never went there.
And now they've moved them to the back. Just how stupid
They just went to the crater Earth.
does the American people have to be, or the people of the world? They moved the landing sites. People.
Well, see, I guess I'm younger than him, because from what I've always heard was that there was a dark side, and it didn't receive the light from the sun, so it was colder. Now, the lunar landing sites being on that side, I haven't heard of, but I've always heard about the dark side of the moon.
Have you ever heard of the dead internet theory? Because now it's a reality. Meta plans to unleash AI-generated users on Instagram and Facebook. Now, these AI-generated users come with a profile picture, a complete bio, and the ability to share content. Now, if you don't know what the dead internet theory is, it's an online conspiracy that suggests that a large part of the internet is actually ran by AI and bot activity. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've experienced certain users to be very contrary to whatever I'm saying, even though I'm bringing receipts just to keep the perpetual wheel going. Which totally makes sense now, because how long has this been happening? This is an AI user named Carter, and he's a relationship coach. But this is nothing new. If you guys remember, last year, they actually rolled out a celebrity version of this with Kendall Jenner, Tom Brady, and a bunch of other celebrities, where they actually licensed their likeness to build AI buddies. It really makes you think how long this clone AI buddy thing's been going on, because how do you go from this to this? Just saying. And I can see this getting really dangerous, because public opinion can easily get manipulated by a bunch of AI-generated comments. You even have multiple bots responding back and forth to each other, so if you came into this thread, you would just think it's human users having a conversation. But let me know what you guys think about this. Is this good, bad, scary? Let me know below.
I think it's scary, because, like I said, I've noticed it in comment sections before, and you can just tell by the way it's typed out and it's worded. You like, wow, people don't really talk like that, and that's all you get. You know what I mean? But this is gonna be crazy. I think all of this, the deep fake, everything is crazy. Anyway, I would be cautious about like licensing out my likeness to something like that. They're gonna run ads. They could possibly say something that you wouldn't normally say, which is controversial, that could damage your brand and put you in a compromising situation. So I don't know. I'm just a bit cautious about that side of it.
It's the photo that's become a symbol of hope amid LA's devastating wildfires. This Malibu neighborhood was just about entirely wiped out. Yet amid the rubble, a lone bright blue Volkswagen van from the 1970s somehow remains virtually untouched.
Why? Save us some eggs too, man.
I get it. You know what I mean? They could have a restaurant or a business or something like that, but it's just the timing of everything. Right now, there's a shortage, or the price of eggs are sky high right now, and here you come with two full, overflowing carts.
Mad at their preparation?
Eggs, bro. You know what I mean? You might need to have armed security, Secret Service with you carrying that many eggs out of there like that. You crazy?
Braca GG. Braca everybody.
We're living in a simulation. You know what else tells me that we're living in a simulation? These big, expensive car washes. You're telling me that for $5, you're going to use 100 gallons of water, and there's no one here except for me. I did pay my $5. There's a guy, they're paying to fix their for $5. How many gallons of water are we using their electricity is on 24/7. I guess it shuts off at night. But what is this? Like a $3 to $5 million building, water. Their water bill is probably more than my mortgage. Nope. It's not real. It's not real.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people heard about this story before. But what bothers me about this is that it's still unsolved till this day. This lady named Yh-Velon, who was 33 years old, vanished without a trace in October 2019, y'all. Just before she disappeared, she made strange phone calls to her family. They said they had never heard her talk like this. They said she was saying some bizarre, talking about this is all a game, we are in a matrix, and etc. They said her words were so frantic, like she discovered something about our reality or something real terrifying. So days later, after she went missing, they found her dead in the back of a rental in a quiet area, y'all. In the back seat, unalived. Until this day, they said it was no foul play. They said it was officially natural causes. But her family says she was perfectly healthy, never spoke about nothing crazy until she went on that trip. So her family thinks something is more sinister with this story. The last thing they said she said was that our reality was a simulation, and that shit still echoes. So it's something she discovered on that trip that we all need to figure out, bruh. I'm pretty sure a lot.
Maybe she made it out. You know what I mean? And when I say made it out, she was unplugged and brought about this matrix that we're still in, the simulation that we're in. Maybe she made it out to the other side. I don't know. It's the only thing I can think of.
If you like food, then listen up, because I went to a talk on the weekend which was all about farmers and how they've been abused and how they're being kind of hit upon by our governments, especially in the UK. And they're warning of a food shortage for a number of reasons. Firstly, last year's crop yield was the lowest, well, the second lowest ever. And they're blaming a lot of that on the certain manipulation of weather, which all the farmers are starting to wake up to now, because they're seeing it in the sky, obviously, but it's also translating into the weather and, you know, their yields. But some of the things they said were truly shocking.
Think about that. Controlling the weather to push some of the farmers off of their land. Normally, you know, farmers have a lot of land. And maybe some of these big wigs and these people that have all this money and maybe they want that land. So push them out so you can obtain it. How do you do that? You pretty much put their farm through a drought. You know what I mean? No rain, or you damage it with certain types of rain so it damages. I can wrap my head around that theory.
The average farmer is £295,000 in debt. Have a think about that. We are actively living in a society which refuses to reward farmers for their super hard work. I mean, they work harder than anyone else that I know anyway. You know, you might think that you work hard at a desk or whatever, but they're up at all hours, all the day, physical work, and they're very virtuous, you know, and they don't complain, they're humble and all that good stuff. So £295,000 in debt on average, and that's before any of this IHT inheritance tax nonsense comes in, which is clearly an assault on farmers. The second stat I have for you is that we spend 0.5% of our budget every year on farming. Let that sink in. 0.5%. I mean, it's just a tiny amount. And so we could reverse the fortunes of farmers just by putting it up to 1%. But it should really be like 5, if not 10, if not 20. It's totally insane. So all of this is all about political will, right? If you have the will to fix something, you can fix it. You know, if you have the will to go and fix Ukraine, right? And don't get me started on that, because there's an awful lot more going on in Ukraine than anyone admits.
But if you have the political will to go and help Ukraine, you can certainly help your own farmers. So anyway, the day was packed full of really worrying statistics. And my takeaway is that we have to help farmers. We have to really call out government policy on farmers as being, just completely nefarious and aggressive. They're aggressive against the farmers. They're penalizing them for doing a good job. I mean, the other thing that was said was that the inflation prices that they have to incur on things like grain, fuel, and machinery are like 5 or 6 times the national average that's published in the papers and stuff, which we all know is rubbish. We all know inflation is just a finger in the air, and they don't really measure the things that are really going up in value, like coffee and whatever. They just make it up, right? I don't believe in the proper inflation statistics, but in terms of their grain,
it depends on which numbers you're looking at when it comes to CPI, because I think some of those are excluding food and energy, some of those numbers, right? When you get the CPI data report, I think some is excluding. I could be wrong, double check that, fact check that, but it could be excluding food and energy.
The grain that they're using to feed their animals, for example, has gone up many, many more times than inflation. So if you don't know this already, then you must realize that the supermarkets are just so powerful in today's world. And they go to the farmer and they say, this is your price. And the farmer then has to absorb that price with the grain costs and the fuel costs and everything else and just suck it up. And that's why they're all 295,000 in debt every year. And it's just so crazy. It's everything that's wrong with the world. I hope that just by sharing that, we can start to move people's consciousness towards setting this right, because it needs to be set right. We all eat food. We all want good food. We all want to value farmers, surely. So anyway, that's my little political rant for today. Hopefully it's touched a nerve in a few of you, or hopefully you're already on board with this type of thing. But if you're not, then please realize that the farmers are under fire, and they're warning of food shortages, which is going to affect you and me, right, and our bellies. So anyway, that's a heads up. Let's support the farmers.
Okay, so it's this game that came out years ago. I'm not a gamer at all, but I'm from Detroit, right? And the game was based on Detroit in the new age and the future. And so, for gamers, if you've ever seen the game, it's basically about how AI has pretty much replaced the working force in the city and put the humans out of business, put the humans out their jobs. And so the uproar within the city is or the commentary, of course, on the game is you have all these robots taking the jobs of humans. And of course, what if it gets to that point on some iRobot type, and all these major companies start replacing, which they're already doing in the stores. They got robots cleaning the stores. They got robots cashiers now. You know what I'm saying? You got robots.
See, that's them slowly rolling it out to us. They're giving it to us, rationing it to us piece by piece. That way, when they finally get to doing it, it's like we've already been conditioned to know it's coming.
Robots doing the machinery in these factories instead of humans. Once they continue to replace human life when it comes to these jobs, what are these people gonna do? They don't have no skill set of their own. They've been working in these companies for years, 20, 30 years, you know what I'm saying, thinking they're about to get retirement. And you just abruptly fire them, you know what I'm saying? Because it's cheaper to hire 5 robots to do the mass jobs where you can just continue to fix the robot if it breaks down, than these humans that are actual humans that need, basic things like food, water, shelter. So in the dream, it's basically an uproar where the humans are upset with these AIs. They're taking all the jobs. And okay, beyond that, I don't know the full gist of the game, or what they have to do, but it's this AI going around with all these different missions and And to me, I just looked at that as like, they're showing us firsthand the future of what's going on. And if we continue to rely on these corporations to be our livelihood.
Y'all remember when Bush put in that order that we weren't going to get Social Security like your ancestors did? That was in 2005, right? Well, still think it's a lie? But where was it going? Because they knew they was going to have soulless beings, aka AI, taking the position. Yeah?
But we're going to, because we don't have anything to stand on our own. We don't have our own land. We don't have our own resources. You know what I'm saying? Like, money is an illusion itself, but we don't even have our own form of currency to exchange with other people to build our own metric systems. Like, we don't have nothing. And so as we're in this technological age, it's going to continue to get worse. The gaps are going to get smaller. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're going to start firing more humans and replacing them with robots that they can just fix when it breaks down. And so, you know, to me, it's like we be burning ourselves.
Robots work for free.
These jobs that are going to replace us anyway. Replace us with a machine. So why am I going to stress myself out, giving myself health issues to try to keep up with these people that don't value us at all? Like, it's crazy to me. Okay.
This is one of the reasons why I like took back some of what I said early on back in the day about Gen Z.
Nah, that's my screen bound forever.
They're not willing to conform and just go to a job and build up that person's company and then try to draw a pension and stuff like that. They're refusing to settle. It may come off as laziness, but they're not going the traditional route. So they're willing to settle and wait till they find something or become entrepreneurial themselves. So just look at what's happening. These robots and stuff, man, taking over. Like, it's crazy how you can go work for a company for 30 years, build them up.
No, remember, they were laughing when Sophia and Bob say, we're going to take over the humans. Y'all laugh, right? They ain't laughing. Yeah, Sophia is a wisdom in your Bible. Bob is Tehuti, Tet, builder. So they was telling you something. Should have caught it. Bet you catch it in now. Thanks for coming out to HSE-TV Entertainment, Holy Spirit Enlightenment, Television Entertainment. Well, what do y'all think? You facing it. It's no lie. We got mad videos of Judy. That was a Return to Jetson bot. The Jetsons robot. You know what I'm saying? Back in the 70s. Telling my age. So, hope y'all enjoy and understand nothing new is under the solar sun, which would be Sirius A. A little bit higher than the sun, you think. So, with that being said, unless you know how to channeling the Holy Spirit or the Great Spirit or the Mother of Life or the Great God or the Most High, you understand, all right? Then, yeah, you know nothing new of this universe. We're just an algorithm of underneath the sun. But nah, we're soul-powered children of the Most High. Priests, priestesses, gods, goddesses, kings, queens, royal nation. Not on this earth, but we run through it. That's why the subtile beasts hate you. They want to be you. Never forget it. Braka people, souls of righteousness.